When I look back at all the companies that I've started so far, the growth has always been sort of like stairs. And what I mean by that is that we had periods where there's really rapid growth, like the growth curve would go up rapidly until we actually hit a plateau where we're like, how do we figure out the next thing? Our revenue is sort of like stable for a while and we're trying to maximize it, but we're stuck, right? In all those times where there was suddenly really rapid growth, there was usually something that we did that we never did before, some kind of a shortcut that would make sure that we get that exponential results. And when I say shortcut, when I say marketing shortcuts, I'm not talking about short-term strategies at all. I'm talking about shortcuts, like a way how you can actually basically shorten the time frame to get a certain amount of results. Like, it doesn't matter what your current goal is. Let's say you're trying to reach, let's say 10,000 customers into your business, right? You could, for example, set a goal to say like, hey, all right, 10,000 customers over the next 10 years, right? But if you would say, hey, you know what, I actually want to get those 10,000 customers in a year, then all of a sudden you'll have to implement different strategies. You'll have to implement different tactics to make that a reality, right? And that is in a way shortcutting your success, because yes, you could actually spend 10 years and do that, or you could find out what is the shortcut, how do you get there faster, implement that, right, in a good way, and actually get that result a lot faster. So that's something that I'm personally very passionate about. How do you find those marketing shortcuts to help your business grow faster? And there's actually 3 steps involved of figuring out what those shortcuts are, right? And the first thing that anyone can start on right now is making sure to absorb all the information. And what I mean with that is, like, your mind needs to be fed. If I were to just sit in my own in a room for like a year without any external impulses and no extra external information, I'm not gonna come up with the ideas that I'd like to be. Like, I need to be fed with information to then in silence connect the dots and actually draw some conclusions, right? Personally, I read a lot. Like, I like to read in the morning books about marketing, about business, about psychology, to sharpen the edge actually. I listen to a lot of podcasts, right? Like podcasts like Mixergy, for example, and there's many others that I listen to at a regular basis. Usually I listen to a couple of episodes every single week. I attend various Facebook groups, and it doesn't matter, like, you don't have to read books or follow podcasts or whatever, right? Whatever way you like to consume information. But I do think it's good to consume information, like to get new ideas, to read about different ideas of what could be your next marketing shortcut. Like for example, watching this very video or listening to this very podcast, in case you're listening right now. As we also know, like, information, it's easy to get information overload. I mean, let's be real, anything that you'd like to learn these days, you can just go to YouTube, enter your search query, whatever you want to know, and there's a video about that. Probably more than 10, probably more than 100 videos. There's not a shortage of information, right? If I'm gonna go to YouTube and I'm just gonna enter the search query, how do I increase my conversion on my website? I'll probably find a lot of bunch of general advice that I could, we've already tested 1,000 times. We run a lot of split tests ourselves, right? So that's the second thing that you'll need to go to look for. How do you figure out trustworthy sources, right? So that's really where the trust comes into play, because when I read books, when I listen to podcasts, I don't just look at the ideas that I'm gathering, or like, oh, this is a cool idea that to, maybe some marketing strategy, or maybe I see someone else's Facebook ad that's been working really well. I don't just look at how they do it. Let's say I'm following some kind of a copywriter or a person who I've seen share lots of good advice in terms of increasing conversions, and I've seen the results for their clients. Like, at that point, like, that person is going to be more trustworthy for that particular thing. So whenever he would share something, right, I would put more trust in that concept. If he says like, we tested out this amazing thing, and I don't know, for example, we speed up our VSLs 8%. I recently saw someone post that speed up their VSL, the speed of their videos 8%. Their conversions went up, right? If I put some trust in that person already before and previously, I'm gonna put more trust into that concept, right? And that makes it more likely for me to actually take it serious. Like, none of these ideas is gonna help you unless you take action, right? And a good one, which also brings me to number 3, a good example of that, of one of what I would call a shortcut as well, is actually a couple of years ago. Like, my whole business was relying on affiliates, right? So basically what that means is that affiliates and partnerships we had were promoting my businesses, my products to their audience, right? And they would get a percentage cut, right? But the problem was that it was very inconsistent, right? Because usually it happened around a special offer, a special launch, or anything like that. So we'd have a really high spike. We get, like I said, we get 7 figures into a week, but then the week after that, it sort of like goes back to zero. We have to like figure out a new way to get those affiliates to promote. So a couple of years ago, I was personally looking for what's the next breakthrough, what's the next shortcut to get myself to the next level, which required a consistent way of attracting clients, right? A lot of the strategies that you can do to shortcut your success, they ain't easy. And all the ones that I'll be sharing here, all the marketing shortcuts, like I wish I would be able to only share things that like, hey, if you just click this green button and everything, like no, it's not like that. Like every business requires work and will require some persistence, which is exactly what point number 3 is about. How do you create the persistence to keep on implementing them? And for me, what that really is, this is my process. Start out with getting all the information. I select certain trustworthy resources, but then once I commit to a certain strategy, I surround myself with people who've already done this. And this actually became really, really real, for example, with the paid ad strategy that I just mentioned, because when I first started running paid ads, guess what? I saw all these people like share all these even trustworthy resources, trustworthy people say that it was awesome. So I was like, awesome, now I'm gonna commit to it as well. I'm gonna start paid ads. And then guess what? Totally flopped. Sure, like we can say, oh yeah, but it's the first try. Of course it's not gonna be profitable, sure thing. But what if your second time, what if your third time, but what if your fourth time is not profitable, which is exactly what happened to me, right? And that's why for step number 3, I always surround myself with people who already do it, right? If I read something online, right, and even if it's a trustworthy resource and they're gonna say, hey, this is gonna work for you, and if I'm gonna work on that for months and months and months and consistently not get it to work without getting any kind of confirmation externally that it will be working, guess what? I'm gonna give up. So I need to get that continuous external motivation that like, hey, it's really working. And for me, in that particular time, I was actually in a mastermind and there was a couple of people who already had paid ads figured out. Like I said, I stumbled, I think 3-4 times. All my experiments were rubbish, I lost money. But because I was surrounding myself with people who already did it, and it wasn't about the fact that they shared how it worked for them, but it was the fact that it did work for them. And I told myself, wow, like if you can do it, and you're not smarter than me, if you can do it, I can do it as well. And I think that's really the 3-step formula to go from like filtering information, right? Step number 1, surround yourself with information. Just open your mind to all the things that are possible, right? And that people are doing to grow their business, right? Figure out what the trustworthy resources are, the trustworthy sources where you can, which strategies do you take more seriously. But then in my experience, if you really want to scale something, if you really want to figure something out or like really make it big in your business, it's good to surround yourself with people who've already done it or who are already doing it. So you will have the persistence to keep on going, right? And that's been magical for me. And obviously there's exceptions to this because we have different kind of shortcuts, right? Like let's say I'm talking about shortcuts that, strategic shortcuts that will take a longer period of time to actually focus on it and to actually make it work. Like I'm not talking about like a tactical shortcut where, for example, let's say Dean Jackson, for example, he came up with a 9-word email. I'm not sure if you ever heard about it. It's a real simple email that you can send out to your people who've opted into your list before, but it's sort of like dropped out, they didn't buy, but they're still there to re-engage them. You would send them, hey, are you still interested in whatever you're selling? Hey, are you still interested in viral marketing? Hey, are you still interested in getting more leads? That's the only thing I would say, like one sentence, cheers, your name, right? So that's a tactical shortcut that doesn't require a lot of confidence. Like it's just like, hey, I read that, it's from a trustworthy resource, right? But then I know, like that's it. You can just implement it in the same day. That's enough, right? But if there's more work involved and you need to really put in the effort to make it work, highly recommend you to apply step number 3 as well, to surround yourself with people to reconfirm that it is a good strategy, because otherwise what you're going to end up doing, like I've done many times, so I'm just going to bounce from one idea to the next because I'm not fully confident, and before I've been able to figure it out, I'm already trying out something else. And I think that's oftentimes a bigger problem compared, like the strategy itself works, but we need to see it through for it to work. All right, so hopefully that's been helpful, and I'll see you on the next episode.